At this time, we'll have our Industry Day panel discussion, and I want to reintroduce our panel. We've got Mr. Terry Edwards, who's the director of the Air Force Civil Engineer Center from San Antonio, Texas. We've got Colonel Brian Laidlaw, the 325th Fighter Wing Commander, Colonel Scott Matthews, the Tyndall Program Management Office Director, and finally Ms. Amy Vanderveer, Senior Planner, Tyndall Recovery Program Management Office. Our panel will answer questions industry members have at this time. We ask that you go to the microphone on the stand, over here on the stand in the middle, and just you're limited to 2 questions, just in consideration for other folks. To accommodate each person that has a question, if you can't get there, there'll be some roaming microphones along the side, and one of our sharp lieutenants here will get a mic to you so you can ask a question. But before that, we get started, I'd like to introduce Mr. Terry Edwards, the director of the Air Force Civil Engineer Center in San Antonio. Sir, you've got the floor.
Well, first of all, I want to just reiterate some of the things that have been said earlier today, and primary among those is thank you for being here. I've seen many familiar faces, colleagues and friends and associates from over the many years that we've been doing this to get this business of engineering and design and construction for the Department of the Air Force together. And so I really, truly appreciate all of you being here and look forward to getting to know and meeting and visiting with more of you. So for those of you that don't know, the Air Force Civil Engineer Center is a direct reporting unit to the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center. And about 3 months ago, coincidentally, right about the time this incident happened here, I was working with General Spacey as the executive director of the Installation and Mission Support Center. And right shortly after the storm, moved over to be the AFCEC director. For me, this is a dream job because this is where we do things, and I think that our response and our support for Air Combat Command and for Tyndall Air Force Base has been a good example of our commitment to this effort as we pushed forward some of our very, very best and brightest staff, some 06s to head up the initial task forces, and then Colonel Matthews here to head up the stand-up of the Program Management Office. And you know, it's a sacrifice on our part, but it's a willing sacrifice because of our commitment to the rebuilding and the stand-up of all of the mission sets here at Tyndall. We're also in a unique position because we're a primary player in the recovery and rebuilding of Tyndall Air Force Base. We're also an affected organization. I have a large presence here at Tyndall Air Force Base with an AFCEC contingent that was mentioned several times as one of the major missions that was determined by the Secretary of the Air Force to remain here at Tyndall. And fortunately, some of the main buildings that group occupies were largely undamaged. They did have roof leakages and some blown out windows and other things. But the main office buildings and one of the indoor laboratories was largely undamaged, so we're very fortunate to be able to keep those mission sets here. We did have some other research facilities that were completely destroyed, and some of the most extensive damage, in addition to what you saw up here on the board, was out in the 9700 area where we had a number of facilities and a number of assets and resources, everything from drones to heavy equipment and the things that blow things up on the runway and runway repair technologies that we're testing. Those were all completely wiped out. So we are, I just want to share the message, we are committed to this effort. And we'll continue to support it. I am glad to be part of it. We've got our best and brightest here with Amy and Scott, and we'll continue to support the mission set here, Colonel Laidlaw and his staff. We're happy to do that. And I think with that, I'll turn the time back over to you, and we'll get started with the panel.
Thank you, sir. At this time, you can come to the center here and ask any questions you might have of the panel, or just raise your hand, and one of our roving microphones will seek you out. Any questions that we can't answer here today, we'll answer on our webpage. So you'll get an answer either now or later. Not everybody at once now. Form a neat line. Sir.
I'm David Walter from Lesnoy, and the question they all want to ask you is, will these slides be available on the website later?
Good question.
Okay, I've done my job. I'm going to sit
All right,
down.
thank you, sir. Colonel Matthews, sir, will these slides be available to the public?
Yes, they will be. So we are going to have, all of you have a card that shows the website. They will all be loaded up there within the next, I would say, 48 hours or less, along with the video presentation. We need to render the video and get it. We're going to put it into chunks out there so other folks that couldn't attend today can get those as well.
All right. No? You go.
I can hear me here.
Yes, sir.
We had a big hurricane in 1992 down in South Florida, Andrew. And I wonder, I don't mean to pick on anybody, but did we learn anything from that helped us here? And have we learned anything from this that's going to help us in the future?
One of the first, that's a great question. One of the first things that we did, Air Combat Command had copies of the after-action reports from Hurricane Andrew, and we got copies of those right away and started looking at those. I'll tell you one of the big differences between Hurricane Andrew and this hurricane and the base recovery. When we rebuilt Homestead, we PCS'd everybody out. The Air Force did, and I was on active duty at the time, but everybody was PCS'd out of Homestead, and so we had kind of an empty slate to rebuild. Here, it's much more challenging, but because we're keeping the missions in place. But that's what we do as engineers. We love the challenge, and I think keeping the missions in place here and demonstrating the value that those have to the area and to the nation really is an important part of why we've done it that way. But we've definitely took advantage of the lessons learned.
I'll piggyback on what Mr. Edwards said. The storm hit on a Wednesday. On Saturday, General Holmes, commander of ACC, flew down to take a look around. And when he got off the airplane, he handed me a folder, and in that folder was the after-action report from Andrew. And I will tell you without question, I read every word of that report, and that was what formulated our initial strategy in the days, weeks, and months after the storm that hit us. So as Mr. Edwards said, some things are different, but some of the things are the same. And it did enable us to get after things a little bit sooner than we would have otherwise had we not learned from what those who went before us taught us. So yes is the answer to your question.
Any other questions? And please say your name and the company you're with as well. We have one right over here.
My name is Marty Ray. I'm with Zapata, and contracting capacity is a question I think everybody wants to know about. What contract vehicles are you currently using? Contract vehicles you plan to use for the early phases of design and construction and going forward, if you could elaborate on that, both from the Air Force side and maybe the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one. So what we are doing, we've met already on several occasions with the Army Corps of Engineers Mobile District to look at their contract capacity today. So I will say, as we go out and plan vehicles in the future, when we project work, this $3 billion bump was not expected in the contracting world. So they are looking at internal capacity they have within the district. They are looking to pull in from, actually I should say within the division and beyond, to pull in contract capacity there, both the design and construction piece. We've also, the local contracting squadron here has gone back to the Air Force Civil Engineers Center and Air Force Installation Contracting Agency, AFICA, and they've got decentralized authority to use the WEC, the REC, and AE-13 to do work as well. So we're looking to do decentralized ordering here locally from those vehicles back in San Antonio. And we're open to others. I know the discussions, we're in the early discussions right now as we do the master planning, what additional capacity may we need and what vehicles we may need to pursue as well. So those are under discussions right now. As well as, I will say, there's also with the contracting squadron, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fletch, but we're also putting out some local contracts on that aren't on any existing vehicles that you're putting out locally as well. Okay.
Any other questions? We've got one here, one in the back.
Scott, Dave DiMartino, OTI. Just related to that question, the DCS has got a small business pool and a full and open. Are you going to restrict it?
I would say at this point, we are open to using all aspects of that vehicle. I'm not limiting anything that we can use because, quite frankly, other than you take $3 billion and give me 10% of that to design, I don't know my full design requirement yet.
There was a lady in the back.
Hi, I'm.
Or a guy in the back, either one will do.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, they handed me a microphone,
Yeah,
so I just
sorry.
went ahead and started.
Can't
Sorry
see you.
about that. Mike Redfern with Tetra Tech. Earlier, Amy was talking about NEPA, the NEPA process, and I'm just wondering about the possibility, since this was a previously developed installation and a natural disaster, and is there a programmatic EA? I'm sure somebody's already thought of this, but I didn't hear that. So it's a question about the possibility of a programmatic type EA to cover the 7-district restructuring that you were talking about.
Yes, sir. We are actually, for the rebuild, we are looking at a programmatic EA that is still being worked through to make sure that how we do it and if it's possible. I will point out that the mission changes will have a separate environmental assessment and EIS process from the rebuild. So there will be multiple environmental assessments. We are also considering going forward for the near-term construction requirements. Those will probably have a separate EA because we'll want to start with those before we can get a programmatic done.
Do we have someone in the back?
Good morning. My name is Carmen Cruz. I come from Overall Contractors in Puerto Rico. Our company has been working in the rebuild of the Puerto Rico Air Force Base in Carolina, and I would like to know if you are considering to set aside solicitations for 8A and HOPZone certified contractors here.
So I would say at this point, it's a little premature to say. I think we're open to many things, so I'm not going to commit to the answer to that question right now. As we're working through the Corps of Engineers and find out what vehicles and agents that we are going to use, I think there'll be an opportunity, but to give you a firm yes or no, I can't at this time.
Sir?
Rick Flesh with Tiger Brain Engineering, and the question is, this is going to be a highly coordinated effort to succeed, to meet your goals, which is going to require contracting to also do their part on the timeline, and I do not see a representative for contracting there. Do you have their commitment? Do you need to get that? Or what commitment can you get from them to move with your timeline?
I'll take that one. So there are actually multiple contracting activities that will be participating in this effort. So there'll be the local cons here at Tyndall will be utilizing the 772nd cons at AFICA for portions of this, and then we'll be using the contracting activities within the Corps of Engineers or any other agents that we may use. So you know, we don't have a signed agreement from all of those activities, but we will absolutely be working with them to coordinate the efforts. We really have to do that. So as we start formulating our acquisition strategies and we know what tools we'll use and what agent and what contracting activity, we'll coordinate those efforts.
We have a gentleman in the back. We have a microphone to the gentleman in the back, please.
Hi, Sean O'Brien with HDR. Quick question. I heard that decentralized ordering to the 325th on the DCS AFCAT contract is going to be an option. Is Mobile Corps also going to be able to use it? Because it does have a lot of ceiling available and it's immediately available as well. Since it's an Air Force use.
So what I will say at this point, we've been in discussions with Mobile District on the capacity that they have today. The vehicle for AE-13 and the others, there were already requirements lined up for some of those vehicles. So We're assessing internally right now. We're preparing some documents for Mr. Edwards at some point to go back to 772nd and FICA to either give, in addition to decentralized ordering, is there an opportunity for other agents to use our vehicles that exist at the Air Force Civil Engineer Center and FICA today? So yes, we are looking at all of that, but have not made a final decision yet.
Any other questions? Got one here and one in the back on the right. Go ahead, sir.
Stanley, probably a question for Amy. In terms of planning, are you guys looking at storm surge? Recognize it probably wasn't a factor for this storm, but if memory serves, it was for Keesler. And just curious what you're doing in that vein.
We are, as part of this process, we are looking at what our minimum floor levels are, at what do we not build below, what the optimal build to or build elevation line is. Some of it is still being discussed as far as how the Air Force determines what that number is and whether that's going to be a global policy or whether it's going to be just a local policy. Tyndall, if you're not familiar with the geography, although it's right on the water, actually sits at about 30 feet at the highest point. So in our coastal modeling, it is actually fairly high. But there are some areas, as Mr. Edwards alluded to, that our research labs in the 97 area of the base were at about 8 feet, and they did get significant flooding. So some of these are still, we're doing the research as we do the design and the planning in order to know what the right answer is and whether we're setting a precedent for the rest of the Air Force. So more to follow on that. One of our other efforts that we're working is to have a standard set of design standards for the rebuild that incorporate answer a lot of those questions.
There was a lady in the back.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having this brief. April Davis with Caldwell Banker Carroll Realty, and I don't know, since base housing is privatized, I don't know if you can answer this, but do you know, will they be rebuilding, or what is going to happen with base housing? Will TLF come back? 90% of my customers are military, and it's hard for them to find housing because not everyone can purchase. So I'm just wondering about base housing.
I'll take that one. So base housing is privatized here at Tyndall Air Force Base, and we're working, the Air Force is working closely with the privatized housing contractor and their lenders and other parties that have an interest to figure out what the future state. They will be rebuilding. The question is to what level? In other words, how many houses will be rebuilt? How many need to, based on feedback from insurance companies, how many will be demolished? How many will be built from scratch? How many will be fixed or renovated in place? But we will be rebuilding base housing as we go through the process, and as the privatization contractor goes through the process with their insurance companies. We just need to work with them to determine what the future state of the missions at Tyndall are and what the housing requirement is for Tyndall, and that will be part of the calculus.
Do we have any other questions?
Actually, the other piece I'd like to add is that the other piece of your question, you mentioned the TLF, which is temporary lodging facilities. Those are government-owned. There was a contract pre-storm to renovate those facilities through the Corps of Engineers. That contract they've assessed the damage from the storm that has restarted, so they are renovating those units as we speak.
Sir?
Michael Batance. I own my own construction company, Batance Enterprises, service-disabled, veteran-owned. And my question has to do mainly with the FY19 $200 million O&M money or thereabouts. What's the process right now, and where are the contracting mechanisms for that specifically?
So today, that is our best estimate of what we think based upon the conditions of the facilities. In the next 45 to 60 days, our goal is no later than the 1st of April, is to take those requirements into develop statements of work, figure out what exactly it is we need to get after. program those projects and get them to contracting. It will be a mix of those vehicles that I mentioned. I think some pre-existing contracts that we already have with, I believe, across the Corps of Engineers, the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, and then other solicitations as well, open solicitations for some of that work. Now, that is for the repair. There's also facility demolition, which those will be, we're working through the Corps of Engineers and local contracting. Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4 are through local contracting here, so those are bid ops will be those opportunities. And also we'll continue with phases, I think we just had the site visit for Phase 2 of the modular facilities. Phase 3, Phase 4 are forthcoming for the modulars as well. And those were through the Corps of Engineers right now as the vehicles that we're using that they have at the Mobile District. And then we'll also have using, I anticipate, AE-13 and other vehicles that the Corps of Engineers have for planning and pre-design and design services.
This lady over here. Can we get a microphone over there? Who's got it? Oh, please stand. When you have the microphone, please stand so we can see.
Great.
And next up will be this lady who had her hand up over here on the left.
Scott Jarvis with RS&H. I have two questions. First one is kind of a follow-on on the contracting agent's perspective. So we know Mobile is here. We certainly know what the suite of tools are that AFCEC has and AFICA. Are you considering NAFAC? I know you mentioned them in your opening remarks. And is there any other, this is probably a question for Mobile, but would there be any other districts that would be supporting Mobile in this effort? So that's question number one. Second question would be just a general sense of where AFCEC and the Air Force are with design build versus design bid build and how you see that playing out in your recovery efforts. Thank you.
Let me start that and then turn it over to you. So we have had a great, we've had great support here at Tyndall Air Force Base and really whenever there's a natural disaster from all of our design and construction agents. And of course, our primary agent here is the Corps of Engineers, and we are greatly appreciative of all of the support they've provided. The Navy has also supported the recovery effort here at Tyndall to a degree. I would not rule anything out, but our primary agent here would be the Corps of Engineers Mobile District, and then our own contracts and the local contracting capability as well.
And there was a lady back here with
No, I got part two.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, part two is where do we stand on design, bid, build versus design build? And I think we're going to have to look at the requirement, look at the timelines, and figure out which vehicle, which method, one way or the other. I don't think we have a preference at this point. I think it's going to come back to when the NEPA's finished and accomplished and what our timeline remains and how we get from point A to point B before first aircraft arrival. And some of the, I'm sorry, sir, some of the feedback that we get back on the industry white papers as well.
Our experience has shown us that there are some projects that are a good fit for design build. We are proponents of design build where it is a good fit. Other projects are a better fit for design bid build. So, you know, we see both as tools in our toolbox, and we'll use both as appropriate.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Barnett with Giggly Enterprises. We're a local aerospace supply company. So y'all kind of talked about community partnerships a little bit. You kind of implied that that might have something to do with partnering with local recreation. What kind of partnerships were y'all interested in doing? Are y'all talking about having something where like a local company builds on the base like a movie theater? I saw the golf course. Like what part of the planning is that? But like what phase? When would y'all want to start on something like that?
Yes. Yes.
All of the above.
Yeah. And as to answer the phase question on timing, that we'll go through several of the Air Force's existing processes for establishing the partnership. So there's a couple different options available to us, and as we identify those requirements, we'll start getting a little more firm in how that timing will work out.
If I could just add one thing, this is a good example of one of the reasons we really see a series of industry days. You know, we would have loved to have shown you a list of projects and timing on when we expected to solicit those and what the acquisition strategy was, but we're just not quite there yet. So on some of the things like community partnerships, we'll be talking about those again in our upcoming industry days. So as we get a little closer to the time to engage, you'll have plenty of lead time to be able to focus in on that so that you can plan for it.
Mr. Edwards, would you guys want white papers on some of the ideas?
Oh, absolutely. I think as Colonel Matthews pointed out, we're open to white papers on everything from community partnerships to how do we build all of this, do all of this construction simultaneously on an air base that's still fully operational. So we are interested in all of the above.
Okay, and I'll just piggyback real quick on that. I would say that my best answer to your question is the sky is the limit. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit is EULs. Part of the EUL process is we identify the land, and then we, to borrow a term from General Goldfein, we squint with our ears and listen to you, what the local community thinks we can do with that piece of property. We at the base recognize that this recovery is not isolated to the 29,000 acres we have on Tyndall. This is a recovery for the entire local community. So my sense is there are a lot of really good ideas out there, both inside and outside our fence line, for how do we best utilize the land that we have, how do we combine resources as we move forward, and how do we use every tool we have in our toolkit to include EULs and some of the things that other folks have talked about. So if there are good ideas out there, you will absolutely get the opportunity to share those with you, and I, for one, look forward to hearing what the community wants to do as well.
Can we get a microphone to him, please?
So thank you. I'm Terran Judd. I'm the Air Force Director of Community Partnership. I work across the country with all the installations in community partnership. First of all, I just want to commend the installation. I was here yesterday in the community. I met with the installation in the community yesterday, doing a fantastic job, and community partnership is right in their wheelhouse, and they've been doing this for years already, and I know it's going to continue at Tyndall. So I can tell you right now that our team is committed, and my team is committed, and I have the support from Mr. Henderson, to build community partnership even better than it was before. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of momentum, I think, and we can make it really, really successful here at the installation with the help of the community. With the leaders that we have, and Tom and Glenn, I think it's really going to excel and be something that we can look back in 5 or 10 years and say that's what really community partnership should be throughout the country, and start from here with that clean slate that we have. So we'll be working immensely hard to find the right ideas and the right things, and we look to the community for, just as Colonel Laidlaw says, for your ideas and thoughts to really make it a win-win situation for both.
Thank you. Sir, you had a question? It should be on, just get a little closer. No, closer. No, closer. I think there's a little switch on there somewhere. Okay. That's all right. We have one coming to you, sir. Ah, there you have it.
So, start again. John Mogi from Jacobs. First, thank you very much for doing this panel and the entire morning effort. It's really beneficial to industry. My question is in the area of design standards and codes. As you look at the universe of options and solutions that you can get into here, whether it be partnerships that lead to EULs or MILCONs or whatever, seems to be there needs to be a uniform set of standards and codes that you follow. Can you comment on kind of where you are in that process, the decision-making process that you're following?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I will say right now, there's a lot of ideas around, but we haven't set on anything. So one, early on, there's some discussion about what the state of Florida would do. We can always be more restrictive than the local code with the Department of Defense. We also have to be mindful that what we institute at Tyndall could affect Eglin and then the other DoD, facilities around. So I think this is a bigger discussion that we need to have. Where we are leaning today, I would say in most of our discussions, no decision has been made, but we are looking at Miami-Dade. And is that the right standard? But if you do that, there's a cost that comes with that. And as we look at, there's been a lot of discussion as we do the repairs today, I can get you a Miami-Dade roof. We'll just call it like that. But then, is it structurally capable of handling it? It's just the materials can withstand that, but it's not the structure. So there's a lot of that we're thinking through, and that's why as we need to come to some realization and decision quickly if we're going to institute and put new roofs on, because the clock is ticking on the temp roofs.
Thank you. That's helpful. This industry group assembled here, I'm sure my counterparts, many of whom do commercial work across the state and in other hurricane-prone zones, familiar with the different codes, could be an advisory body on how to approach that effort.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Hi, Andrea Gibson with Brick Procurement. My question is there any established commitment or goal for small business participation going forward?
So with regard to small business, there will be goals for different contracting activities. So the Corps of Engineers will have small business goals that they'll work into their acquisition planning on our behalf. I can tell you that within AFCEC and AFIMSC, we also have small business goals that we are very committed to, and we will exercise small businesses as a tool here as part of our acquisition strategy as we develop that acquisition strategy. And let me just say a word about small business. I am a supporter of small businesses because we have seen over a period of many years, small businesses often are more agile and able to respond to some of the challenges, like some of the challenges we're facing here in many cases than large businesses. Now there's a balance there because you've got to look at the capacity and the capability of small businesses versus that agility that they bring to the table. So it's a balanced kind of coordinated approach that will all be part of the acquisition strategy. We do have goals. We intend to exceed them as we do every year.
We have some questions over here. Can we get a microphone there?
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for having all of us today. Some of us here survived the hurricane and understand what you're up against. My name is Paul Edwards. I'm with Chiniga Corporation. The question is to follow on, will there be 8A set-asides or opportunities as we go forward with the acquisition?
Yes, that will also be part of the overall acquisition strategy. That is a segment of our small business, overarching small business goals, and so we'll be looking to exercise all of the authorities that allow us to meet our small business goals, including 8A set-asides. So that'll be part of the overall strategy. And again, we can't do this without small business, just as we can't do this without large business. This has got to be kind of a coordinated, integrated effort, and we're committed to both.
This lady right here.
Good morning. My name is Ashley Smith. I'm actually with Embry-Riddle, but it's a side note. I'm a military spouse, and something that I hadn't heard talked about a lot is focus groups from the military family side of the house as you rebuild that side. Is there a group going forward of actual military families, spouses, talking about what the future of that looks like? I've heard a lot about the dormitories, that side, but I'd like to know that military families are being represented on that panel as well.
I'm not sure that we've gotten that far in thinking about that. I'm actually a retired military, spouse of a retired military, so I definitely understand your thoughts and concerns. But I think as we get forward, go forward with the planning, yes, there will be some focus groups, and I will say that several of your, I I don't want to say colleagues, but compatriots, have already reached out to me to let me know that they are concerned about the way things are. You know, people who are my friends from my other side of my life have reached out. So yes, I don't know when, and I don't know when we'll get to that point in the planning process, but it definitely is in the thought process of the way we're going forward.
Morning.
If I could just add to that really quickly, I would encourage you and others that have concerns or suggestions from a military family perspective to send those in when we come live with the website. You know, we say we're calling for white papers. It doesn't have to be a corporately produced white paper. It can be a family that says, hey, here's some things that we worry about in our family that we'd like to see incorporated into the areas where we interact on the base.
I'll just piggyback real quick. I think that's part of the reason we're here today. That was a fabulous suggestion, and I wrote that down. And I'm going to personally make sure that we include the voice of the spouses as we go through our design. So thank you very much for asking that question.
Okay, I think we're ready.
I'm Victoria Meckley. I'm with the TEPA companies. My question is regarding the white papers. Do you guys have an established process? Are you going to respond to them, or are you going to publish them publicly for everybody else to see? Is there any discussion about how you're going to process those or respond to them?
As all eyes look at me. At this point, when I talked about the many things that we're working on, yet to be determined how we're going to do that. So that's, after getting through today, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to host Mr. Henderson tomorrow. And then Saturday, I will wake up and think about how we're going to do the white papers as we go through. So in all seriousness, that's we're living some days day to day, but we have started thinking about it, and I need to kind of put some ideas down on paper, share with others, and come out in, like I said, in the next 30, 45 days and outline that when we put the call out. Thank you.
Would that be something that would go on a website, that process?
Yes, we're going to put that on that link on the card that we gave everybody, the Air Force imsc.af.mil/Tyndall PMO.
And let me just add one more thing. So we recognize there's a balance there, right? Because if we publish everything and make it public facing, then some ideas won't come forward. So we recognize that. On the other hand, if we don't publish everything and make it public-facing, there's a different set of ideas that may not come forward or be generated. So we just have to work through the thought process on what we think makes the most sense. And that will be part of our announcement when we set up when we put out the call for the white papers.
I'm David Walter from Lesnoy. I have a re-attack, and that is SBA allows you to restrict, especially in the construction NAICS codes, the geographic responses, and this is SBA Region 4, I think. So is there any intent either on AFCEC or the Mobile District or others to restrict or put some participation from the local companies so that you're getting people from the impacted area that are actually working on those construction projects, as opposed to carpetbaggers like me who live in Washington State? So what do you see a local content requirement at some point? Right now, I understand all hands on deck. Where do you see it going in the future?
Well, having known Mr. Walters for probably 30 years, I'd have another word than carpetbagger.
It's 32, if one was counting.
I don't think we have the answer to that question yet, but as we develop our acquisition strategy for all of the projects, that will certainly be a consideration.
Hi, Mickey Addison from Deloitte. I got two questions, one on EUL and one on cybersecurity. So the EUL question is, are we planning on using the existing authorities, or are we looking at streamlined processes and additional authorities for EUL? And the cybersecurity question is, how are y'all already working with the network experts in the Air Force? We talked about smart bases and smart cities and smart buildings. That's bandwidth and infrastructure and cybersecurity. So we're just kind of curious where we are on that.
I'll start the answer to part of that at least. So in rebuilding Tyndall as the smart base of the future, we can't fix all the other challenges. That doesn't fix all the Air Force challenges with regards to networks and bandwidth and all of that. We have not had any extensive discussions at this point with CIO A6 or any of the other communication activities within the Air Force. But what we do know is that we want to make Tyndall a smart base, as smart as it can be. And so we know we've done demonstration projects over the past several years. We've had presentations from a number of firms. We're asking for input at this forum. So we will be looking at options on how we can do that. And that could range from sensors that listen for a motor to start making abnormal sounds that alert somebody somewhere so that a technician can go out and grease or oil the bearings, to other technologies that sense when a roof needs to be repaired, or you know, when the power goes up and down and you turn off lights and turn on lights and so on and so forth. So frankly, one of the things we're looking for here is input on the kinds of smart basing, smart buildings, ideas that are, you know, we don't want to do demonstration projects here. We want to do things that work, and we're definitely looking for ideas on that. So no extensive discussions with CIO at this point. We can't fix the Air Force challenges with bandwidth and resiliency, but we can certainly make Tyndall a showcase for the Air Force. You want to add to that?
Yes, sir. So, Mickey, the point I'll talk to you about cyber at this point is that as I sit back and think about what the PMO looks like, it is clear we are going to have E&I, which is engineering and installation. The folks that actually put the backbones and design the backbones are going to be integrated with us side by side as we build this base. There are some initiatives underway through Air Combat Command and senior levels of the Air Force, I think, on cyber and some other things as they look at to restore the infrastructure here that I don't have the details on. But it's at the forefront of my mind, because how do you make this thing work? And we had our master planning session kind of, I guess it was last week, as time kind of blurs together. And we talked awful lot over the course of the last, you know, probably 2 decades or a decade over that we say an installation is a weapon system. And we say that over and over again, and we have the chance to shape that. And so I kind of threw out in that meeting, if Tyndall was like the Starship Enterprise, how would you design it and operate it? Would you think differently about the systems? You know, as we talked about early on, the privatization of utilities on power and water, cyber is going to be just as important as power, I think, in the future. So how do we put that in and, you know, build that in with expandable capability in the future? So I'm looking forward to how we tackle that problem. And then your other part on EULs, I don't think, other than the authorities we have today, if there's something else and there's an authority that we would need, I think someone needs to submit or have ideas on what those are.
There's a hand up.
I will say that there is recognition. I think it's a great question about the EUL. Recognition that the EUL timeline may get it out of sync with some of the compressed timeline that you saw Amy Vanderveer and Colonel Matthews produce today. So we are tracking that. The important thing, I think, though, is to focus on the fact that we have redrawn the fence line, at least temporarily, hopefully permanently. And the value of that property out there is pretty high for the base, for the airmen, for the local community. So there is a process, and the process exists for a reason. Just because it takes a long time to do an EOL doesn't mean it's a bad idea to do an EOL. So we are very cognizant of the disparity in that timeline, and we'll do what we can within the laws that exist to make it happen. I think the important point, though, is to at least, even if you're not breaking ground based on the amount of time it takes to do these EULs, at least you're incorporating your long-term plan for how you're going to use that valuable property into the strategic planning that we're doing for the base right now. So I think it's a great question. We are tracking that, but you know, it's one of those things where you can only do so much.
Paul Edwards with Chiniga Corporation again. As you build your base, will you be thinking about energy storage for resiliency? I know you've got some solar panels here. We all know that the state of Florida will not let you sell that across the fence. will you be thinking about energy storage here?
In a single word, absolutely.
Thank you.
That would be, you know, energy resiliency is important for the Air Force, and there's a reason it's important. We can't operate our missions if we don't have resiliency in energy and other things. So we are open to suggestions and ideas on all of the above. And again, frankly, it's one of the reasons that we are interested in your thoughts on the white papers. So thank you for bringing it up.
Sir?
Yeah, a planning and timing question. Are you looking to split the F-35 and MQ-9 ops, like put the MQ-9s out on the drone, develop that area? And the second question is, timing-wise, mission IOC, which comes first in planning, MQ-9s or F-35s, recognizing it's all going to be going at the same time? But.
Okay, it's a great question. It's one that we ask all the time on the base, I'll tell you. For right now, what the Secretary has publicly committed to is 2023. F-35 is coming on base. As Colonel Matthews has alluded to earlier, that is a timeline that gets us inside of our normal planning timeline for all of the things that we need to go through as far as the NEPA process and go through our repeatable basing process that the Air Force is going to go through to make all these decisions. So the clock is ticking on that one. As far as the MQ-9 itself, as you're well aware, it was about this time last year, the Secretary announced that this is the preferred alternative for the MQ-9, which kicked off an EIS process that started last summer. In addition to Tyndall being the preferred alternative, they also have to look at the other alternatives, which was Vandenberg. So that process has not stopped as far as going through that NEPA process. Which one's going to get to the finish line first? I don't know. The Secretary definitely hasn't committed to one or the other. What I will tell you is on the base, we are absolutely incorporating the inputs from the end users there to make sure that we don't make sure that all the right people have the right seat at the right tables for the right planning charrettes so that we at the base are ready to implement whichever timeline comes first. So short way of saying is we're working them in parallel, but as far as committing to a timeline, I don't think the Secretary is ready to do that yet.
So lay down real estate-wise, are they all going to be same runway or kind of segregated?
Well, that's part of the that's part of the SATAF process and how that plays out. I will tell you that assumptions that we made prior to October 10th, 2018, in terms of space and who goes where, some of those assumptions have absolutely changed. You saw the slides; the flight line looks a whole lot different. So one of the things that we're foot stomping to those who come in from out of town, and Colonel Matthews said it earlier, is you have to see it to believe it on the base, is so those who do make those decisions on which runway are you going to use, where are you going to bed this down, you need to come down here to Tyndall first, come down here with eyes wide open, take a look around, get everybody together at the table, and now we'll work with Amy and her team to go, what does that flight line redesign look like? So a long-winded answer of saying, from our perspective, everything is still on the table.
Good morning. My name is Dave Robow. I'm with a nonprofit called the Gulf Coast Energy Network. Having come from the Air Force community in the Civil Engineering Directorate and having been a part of multiple rapid improvement events on MILCON, I understand kind of what that cycle looks like. I'm just wondering, because the success of the county is so interlinked to the success of Tyndall and vice versa, are there some opportunities for P4 where you can leverage public-private partnerships, perhaps to look at that as one of the tools in the toolbox?
We're just as we are with EULs and other innovative ways of tackling this, absolutely. You know, P4 is another great tool that the Air Force can utilize, and if there are opportunities as we get through our planning and look at our redevelopment where P4 makes good sense and we've got interest in the community, we'd absolutely be interested in that.
We have time for about 2 more questions. Any other questions?
Thank you for your time answering all our questions today. My name is Mary Catherine Cook. I'm with Cross Environmental Services, and I have 2 questions. The first question is, as we're going into phase 2 and 4, and you're making the determination about whether facilities and buildings will be demolished or renovated, repaired, are you conducting environmental surveys prior to those solicitations being posted? And my second question is, has there been any discussion about the Florida Department of Protection's emergency procurement order being extended after February the 3rd?
So if I understand the second one, I don't know the answer to that question. I was not familiar. Does anybody in the room have the answer to that question? Okay, we can get that. Well, I'll take that one for the record and get that one. I'm not sure about that one. The other one was, the first part of your question was, are environmental assessments being done prior to the decision to make whether we're going to tear something down, demolish it, or something? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Prior to the solicitation. So
Prior.
the survey is complete before the solicitation comes out for the contractors to give you proposals.
I think at this point, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. Some of the things we had to move out expeditiously for some of the initial demolitions that remediation occurred. We knew pre-storm that there was something that had to be remediated during the demolition. We have those records, and we're going through that now. There was also an environmental team out of the Air Force Civil Engineer Center that was here in the early days of post-storm. But we do know that there's still some other stuff that has to be cleaned up. So at this point, I will say it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
We can take one more if anybody has one last question.
Can I make one more comment on that, to answer that? I just wanted you to know that it would not only speed the process to have those surveys done in advance of those solicitations, but it could potentially save a considerable amount of money due to the type of material that will be taken to the different disposals. So just wanted you to be informed of that.
Thank you. This concludes the panel discussion. Colonel Matthews, would you like to say a few parting words?
So I will tell you, I can't remember who used the term early on in this discussion. It may have been Mr. Henderson. Someone used the phrase team of teams. And I will tell you that there's been a lot of people, both at the installation and those that have come in to support us. And I would say an event like this could not happen without a team. Just quick raise your hand. All the lieutenants, can you raise your hand that are around the room? So they are here supporting us. They are students, as Colonel Laidlaw mentioned, the Air Control Squadron. They have a pipeline training date to start, and they are on casual status. And they offered up to help any way they could to get things going today. So really applaud them, the late nights and early mornings to get out here to help us do that. So big round of applause. PA team, Veronica, Brian, he was the narrator, he's got the voice for radio, I'm just kidding, and video. And all the support from Air Force IMSC PA and our local PA team here, Don and where's Major Verdine? Really appreciate all of them helping pull this together. I'm an engineer, not an event planner. I've learned more from Veronica in the last 10 days than maybe I'll start a side business after this. So really, round of applause for them as well. Really thank them. And last but not least, really do appreciate, where's Glenn? Glenn, you and the team and this great hosting us in this venue today, I really do appreciate locking that in and getting this set up and the support that we received, planning and getting to where we are. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you all very much. That's all I have.
Well, this concludes our Industry Day formal activities. Thank you for joining us today.